If you drive a car, and are someone who obeys the speed limit, you may wonder at all the cars speeding by you. You may also wonder why they suddenly slow down when they spot a highway patrol car. Manufacturers of radar detectors, known as fuzzbusters, count on there being people who are only law-abiding when they know they're being watched. True integrity, on the other hand, is the way we behave when we think no one is looking. But with a fuzzbuster, one can enjoy the reward of being able to speed while avoiding the punishment of getting caught. Theologians operate on the same premise as the radar detector manufacturers. They presume that people will only behave when they think they are being watched. So, they tell us that we are always being watched by their all-seeing God, thus denying them the opportunity to demonstrate true integrity. Remove belief in this policeman in the sky, they warn us, and anarchy would ensue in a world filled with selfish brutality. Also, similar to the fuzzbuster makers, theologians promise reward and offer a way to avoid punishment. They claim that if we believe in their God, we will be rewarded with an eternity of bliss, but disbelief will garner for us eternal punishment. Historically, such a system of promised reward and threatened punishment has been used to encourage a belief in God. Saint Pascal expressed it in philosophical terms when he likened it to a wager. To paraphrase Pascal, there are 4 possibilities when it comes to belief in God. When it comes to the idea of God, you either believe or you don't believe it exists. Now, God either exists or it does not exist. This sets up our 4 possibilities. If God exists, and you believe, then you'll be rewarded in the afterlife. But if God exists and you don't believe, then you'll be punished in the afterlife. But what if God does not exist? Then there is no afterlife, and no consequences to believing or not believing. So, whether God exists or not, you've got everything to gain and nothing to lose by believing in God. But, if you disbelieve, and God does in fact exist, then you have made the worst possible decision, and you'll be punished. Following this logic, it would appear that the only sensible choice would be to believe in God. Either you'll be rewarded, or you'll be no worse off. In either case, you'll avoid the possibility of punishment. There are lots of problems with Pascal's wager. First, it does not follow from God's existence that there is an afterlife. These 2 things could be wholly independent. Buddhists believe in an afterlife while not believing in God. They believe that karma operates on its own to reincarnate one as deserved. Second, it does not follow that God is obligated to reward anyone with an afterlife just because they believe in God. Likewise, it does not follow that God would punish someone for disbelief. Why would belief be the overriding consideration in such a judgment rather than one's moral integrity? In ancient Egypt, the god Anubis was thought to judge in the afterlife by weighing one's heart against a feather. This seems more enlightened to me, judging not on what happened to believe, but rather on what was symbolically in one's heart. In Pascal's wager, we are asked to accept at least 3 new ideas on faith in order to shore up a belief in God. The 3 things are: an afterlife, that God rewards believers, and that God punishes disbelievers. So, in reality, this argument does nothing in the way of providing a reason to believe in God. It merely asks us to believe 3 additional things for which there is no evidence. Anyone could use this same line of reasoning to argue for any belief they wanted us to accept. If you believe, you will be rewarded; if you disbelieve, you will be punished. This does not strike me as a moral or intelligent way to decide what is true or false. If we agreed with the validity of Pascal's wager, all it would really do would be to induce us to accept whatever belief promised the best reward and or threatened the worst punishment. For example, the Catholics believe in a fiery hell of torment awaiting non-Catholics in the afterlife. Others, including the Jehovah's Witnesses, believe that death is a non-conscious state. Let's plug these facts into Pascal's truth table. If Catholics are correct, and we become Catholics, then we'll have a blissful afterlife in heaven. But if we stay non-Catholic, we'll be tortured for eternity in hellfire. If Catholics are incorrect, then there is no consequence to being Catholic or non-Catholic. So, Whether the Catholics are right or wrong, you've got everything to gain and nothing to lose by becoming Catholic. But if you don't become Catholic, and the Catholics are in fact right, then you have made the worst possible decision, and you'll be punished. On this logic, every Jehovah's Witness, along with the rest of us, should immediately convert to Catholicism. Fine, so you become a Catholic. But now I come along and tell you that if you don't join the First Church of Unicorn Worshippers, not only will you be tortured in the afterlife, but so will all of your family and friends. Now, since I've threatened more than even the Catholic Church, you should switch to the unicorn religion if you really want to follow the logic of Pascal's wager. The wager assumes that one can freely decide to believe something. But, in fact, it is not possible to believe that something is true when you believe that it is false. No amount of effort on your part can get you to the point where you can honestly say, I believe in unicorn. Religions which promise rewards and threaten punishments in an afterlife are playing a rigged game. No one can verify, or disprove, their claims without dying. Once dead, they cannot report their findings back to the living. So, where did this idea of an afterlife, with rewards and punishments for believing in God, come from? It's no mystery, it's a well-known, undisputed and indisputable fact that men made it up. Since it is a story made up by men, we have no more reason to believe it than any other story or idea that men may make up. We do know that some men, and some women, have a propensity for lying, and since all the contradictory tales of religion cannot be true, we know that there have been many instances of people making up religious lies. Take Joseph Smith, for instance, and his tale of the angel Moroni lending him golden plates containing the Book of Mormon. This story cannot stand up to even the most cursory investigation, and yet there are millions of Mormons who claim to believe it. It's no more believable than my purposely ludicrous unicorn. Or look at science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard, who invented a childish story about aliens and packaged it as a religion called Scientology, which has attracted tens of thousands of dupes. Since ideas concerning the afterlife cannot be verified, the only way we can ascertain whether they are likely to be true is to use our old reliable Baloney-Detection Kit, our common sense. Let's apply common sense to the idea of an afterlife where immortal souls are rewarded or punished based on their belief in God. First of all, to state the obvious, it appears that when something dies it is dead. For instance, when you swat a pesky fly with your fly swatter and kill it, that fly is dead. Some other bug or some animal may come along and eat its dead body, or it may be left to decompose, which means smaller organisms will eat it. But that fly is no longer buzzing around somewhere in a spiritual realm. Unless of course there are flies in heaven. Another example, when your pet gerbil dies, you bury it in the backyard and its little body decomposes. And that's that, end of story. You may keep the gerbil alive in your fond memories of it, but that's the extent of it. The gerbil isn't continuing to think and remember the time it spent with you, its consciousness is gone forever. Of course, being human we are biased towards humans, and so we want to believe that we are the only animals with souls. But there is no basis for this belief other than wishful thinking. We know that thoughts are directly tied to brain function. Electrical stimulation of various areas of the brain will cause a patient to vividly recall long-forgotten incidents, or to perceive imaginary sights and sounds in the here and now. If consciousness were housed in an immaterial soul, then no amount of physical stimulation of the brain could possibly cause thoughts to occur. Since we know that thoughts, and hence consciousness and self-awareness, rely on brain functioning, it isn't too hard to figure out what happens to thoughts and hence our self-concept when the brain ceases to function at death. If we were really an immaterial soul, housed inside a physical body until released by death, then unconsciousness would be difficult to account for. What happens to the soul when we sleep, or faint, or are knocked unconscious by a blow to the head? If we are really immortal souls, why would we ever have a lapse of consciousness? Our bodies may need to recuperate, but surely an immaterial soul would not, and if this soul is supposed to be our consciousness, our real self, then we should never black out. Amnesia would also be impossible. How could the soul ever forget who it was? So, our common sense leads us to the conclusion that when we die we are just dead. Just like the fly. Just like the gerbil. As far as punishment goes, we need to ask how an immaterial soul could ever be harmed by physical fire or metal pitchforks, or any of the other crude torments dreamed up by the Catholic Church in the Dark Ages, to scare people into tithing and conformity. More importantly, we need to ask what purpose such punishment would serve. Since hell is depicted as a place of no return, it cannot possibly serve to rehabilitate anyone. So, what purpose would it serve to torment someone for eternity? Think of the worst person you can imagine, Hitler. Or Charles Manson, someone like that. Our human anger against such monsters is understandable, and our baser instincts may long to see such people suffer as they caused others to suffer. But not for eternity. Imagine if the Allies had found Hitler at the end of World War II before he had a chance to commit suicide. What do you suppose they would have done with him? Well, what was done with the other German war criminals? They were put on trial, and many of those who were found guilty were executed by hanging. When hanging is done properly, it is an instantaneous death. But suppose some irate soldier with a flamethrower was the first to discover Hitler cowering inside his bunker. Suppose his rage against this man was so great that, without thinking, he set Hitler on fire and watched him die in horrible agony. It's understandable, and I suspect the soldier would have been given a slap on the wrist. But what if Hitler hadn't died within a minute or two? What if by some miracle he just kept burning and screaming? How many minutes do you imagine that any sane human being could stand by and watch such a scene before putting the man out of his misery? 5 minutes? 10? I don't think anyone with a shred of humanity could watch more than that. So, how long could a God of love watch? A God with none of our baser instincts? Not for an eternity, surely, not for one moment. Having dispensed with the fairy tale punishments of religion, what can we say about the rewards? Since there can be no proof of the existence of an afterlife, we must look to our present life. Here we find that when you believe in God, you join a large group of like-minded people. These people will accept you and may even be friendly to you as long as you continue to believe as they do. So, it is conditional friendship, but that's better than nothing, and is more than many people ever achieve. When you believe in God, you get a full sense of security, your eternal life is taken care of, and you have the comfort of believing that you'll see your dead loved ones again in heaven. When you believe in God, you have a way of coping with problems. It is all God's will, and God knows what's best. Such are the rewards for belief. What can we say then about the rewards for disbelief? First of all, you're facing the world as it is without deluding yourself with comfortable lies. There is strength to be found in that. It is also what makes progress, i.e. improvement, possible. Advancements in medicine, health, and every other scientific endeavor have been made only when religious ideas have been abandoned in favor of reality. For instance, it was once held that demons were the cause of disease, and possession was the cause of mental illness. Modern-day faith healers still hold these beliefs. Real progress in treating and curing disease was not made until the medical profession abandoned this belief and studied reality. Second, you don't have any phony religious friends who will dump you the moment you start thinking for yourself. Third, you actively seek ways to improve your life and society instead of shrugging it all off as God's will. Fourth, you are free to adopt the methodology of science, forming hypotheses and testing them by empirical evidence, revising your beliefs about the world to ever more closely reflect reality. This is in contrast to a religious belief in which all new facts must be made to somehow fit into the preconceptions of your religion, and being denied if they can't fit. Such as the idea that the sun does not orbit the earth. So, we need to revise Pascal's truth table. If God does not exist, the consequences of belief are not really nada. Spending our time worshipping, praying, and expecting God to step in to solve our problems is a waste of one's life. While a lack of belief, in contrast, puts us in touch with reality and places us squarely on our own 2 feet, ready to work to make progress in improving the world. So, Why be good if there's no God? We could as well ask, why obey traffic laws when there are no police officers around? The answer is that such laws are there for our own good. If everyone were to drive without regard for anyone else, the roads would be too dangerous for everyone. We agree to certain laws and rules of conduct so that we can all get along in society. Beyond that, there is our inherent empathy, which makes virtue its own reward. When you are sad, I feel sad. It makes me happy to cheer you up. The more happy people I have around me, the happier I will be. Finally, there is love, which can grow out of empathy, but most likely originated in the maternal instinct shared by all mammals. The world is not filled with malevolent individuals only looking out for themselves. Sociopaths are the rare exception, but they are the ones that make the news due to their notoriety. You see those cars passing you, but seldom notice the cars ahead of you, or behind you, that are going the speed limit, because they are in sync with you. They don't pass you, and you don't pass them. The majority are law-abiding and wish no harm to others. They aren't wretched sinners needing threats of punishment to keep them in line. They don't need a policeman in the sky. All they need is to get in touch with their inherent empathy.